You'd ask me if I had any other questions, and I told you that I might have a couple. I have really only two areas of questions, to be very short, I believe. And then we would get to the question of the 402 hearing, which would encompass the letter from Nicole Brown Simpson and also the whether or not there's a state of mind exception for any statements made by Mr. Simpson when he was either watching television or during those conversations. Professor Uelmen will be handling those aspects.
All right, let's handle those now.
All right, do you want to do that now?
Yes.
Very well, Your Honor. And then go back to the other questions.
We need to get Mr. Gordon down to handle the 402 hearing.
I could ask those other questions.
My understanding, we were going to do this at 1:30.
It was mine too, Your Honor.
I wasn't confused.
My understanding.
Matter of fact, he had D's and A's just a short while ago. I'm not sure whether the file these or not. The 402 issue.
Two 402 issues, yes.
And one of those issues relates to the watching of television.
Yes.
Ms. Clark can handle that one, that part of it.
All right, Mr. Uelmen, do you want to address the state of mind issue regarding comments made by the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor. We would contend that this would come within Section 1250 of the Evidence Code as evidence of a statement of the declarant's then existing state of mind, emotion, or physical sensation. This evidence is offered to prove Mr. Simpson's state of mind, and we believe on that basis alone, simply the exclamations made indicating what his state of mind was at the time these events were taking place would come within that hearsay exception.
Ms. Clark?
Yes, as I've already indicated at sidebar, Your Honor, these purported statements fit no aspect of the evidence code under Section 1240. There's no foundation laid. Number one, though, as I indicated to the court, I don't see how a foundation could ever be laid. We have to remember that at the point in time that the witnesses are discussing the fact that he's at Rockingham watching the television and making exclamations, he has already been interrogated by the police, had his photograph
Ms.
taken.
Clark, forgive me for interrupting you, but I understood Mr. Uelmen's argument to be under the rubric of 1250 state of mind, not spontaneous declaration of 1240.
Oh, excuse me. And under 1250 is even more so under 1250. 1250 explicitly states that there has to be an aspect of trustworthiness to the statement, and that foundation could never be laid. With respect to the defendant's existing mental or physical state, there has not been proffered any mental defense in this case. It's an alibi. And 1250 is most appropriately applied in cases where you have some kind of mental condition offered by way of a defense, which makes it an issue. The defendant's demeanor is one thing, but a 1250 exception allowing for the admission of hearsay is a quite different thing, for which certain foundation has to be laid. With respect to the very first number 1 under that section, the evidence has to be offered to prove the declarant's state of mind, emotion, or physical sensation when it is itself an issue in the action. The defendant's state of mind, emotion, or physical condition or sensation is not itself an issue in the action. We are talking, the defense wants to proffer this evidence to show the defendant's demeanor circumstantially, proving that he could not behave in that manner if he had actually just murdered his wife and Ron Goldman. That's a different situation than his state of mind being in issue in the action. It is not within the meaning of this code section. And it's not offered to prove or explain acts or conduct of the declarant in this case, because there is no act or conduct at the time of watching the television that requires explanation or elucidation. And furthermore, the foundational aspect of trustworthiness is missing. We have the defendant surrounded by friends and family watching television reports that clearly appear to be describing evidence that's very incriminating, very inculpatory in nature. What is he going to do if he intends to get away with this? Say, they got me? You know, not if he's intending to get away with it. So obviously he's going to say, I can't believe it. I can't believe they're saying this. How could they possibly say this about me? So you have neither the indicia of trustworthiness, nor do you have the appropriate situation to allow it. The defendant's state of mind is not an issue in the action until such time as the defense intends to proffer a mental defense. So the people would submit that this code section is inapplicable to the instant case.
All right. Mr. Uelmen, do you have any brief response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. This really just goes to the basic principle of demeanor evidence. Who else is a defendant going to be surrounded with at a time when he has just learned of his wife's death other than friends and family? Those friends and family are themselves going to come to the witness stand and describe their impressions of his demeanor at this time. And certainly an alternative way of showing that demeanor is to show the statements that he made at that particular time about his state of mind, emotion, or physical sensation. So in every respect, this state of mind is relevant at this point, and the hearsay exception clearly applies. All we are asking for are statements of his state of mind, emotion, or physical sensation at that time, that is, at the very time these statements are made.
What statements?
The statements of how he is feeling and reacting to the news reports of his wife's death.
All right. Thank you. All right, the objection, as indicated previously in our discussions at sidebar, indicated I felt that there was a lack of foundation under either 1240 or 1250 for these statements. The argument is now couched under 1250, state of mind. A state of mind at that particular point in time is not a particularly relevant issue. I agree that there's another problem. We don't know what the specific news report that is being reacted to, so the context of the statement alleged to have been made by the defendant is quite unclear. I don't see the indicia of truthfulness necessarily there because of that failure. And also, given the vague nature of this particular statement by the television newscasts, I find it too amorphous to have a clear idea of what's being responded to. I think it's would be a undue use of the court's time, so I'll sustain the objection also under 352. All right, other issue, the statement letter. Mr. Uelmen.
Let me start with a detailed offer of proof, Your Honor, and then indicate the theory under which we believe this is admissible. We have, and I believe it has been lodged with the court, a document consisting of 5 pages, handwritten letter, which we believe we can establish was written by Nicole Brown Simpson to O.J. Simpson and delivered to him along with some videotapes of their wedding and family videotapes in March of 1993. Now, the relevance of this, of course, takes us back to the ruling of the court with respect to all of the previous incidents in the relationship between O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown Simpson that this court heard evidence as to prior to trial, made a pretrial ruling, and then those incidents were admitted. And those incidents included altercations going back to 1985. They included 2 incidents resulting in 911 calls, one of which took place in 1989, the other of which took place in October of 1993. And then intervening during this time was a divorce of the parties in January of 1992. Now, the theory under which the prosecution is offering all of these prior incidents is that they are relevant to show Mr. Simpson's state of mind, to show motive, to show intent, to show plan, and finally to show the identity of the perpetrator of this murder. And what the prosecutor wants is for the jury to draw from these incidents some inference that Mr. Simpson was obsessed with jealousy over his wife. As I believe Mr. Darden put it in his opening statement, that he couldn't stand the thought of losing her, that he was obsessed with controlling her. So now comes the defense turns to rebut this evidence. And we are going to rebut it by showing there was not a motive, and there was no intent, that there was no plan, that the inferences that the prosecution wants to draw from all of this evidence simply are not true and should not be drawn by the jury. And there are a number of ways in which we can go about producing rebuttal evidence in this regard. This is one of them. We are offering this letter, really, as a verbal act to show that the resumption of the relationship between Nicole Brown Simpson and Mr. Simpson was initiated by Mrs. Simpson. That what was going on here was not some sort of obsessive effort to control his former wife, but that she initiated a trial period in which they would resume their relationship. Now, we are not offering this letter for the truth of its contents. I think that's important to bear in mind. We, frankly, make no offer at all with respect to the sincerity or the truth of any of the representations made in this letter. The reason we want to offer this letter is to show the impact, the effect that it had on the mind of the recipient, that is, Mr. Simpson. And we will show that after he received this letter, he sought to be counseled by both his mother, his daughter. He showed them the letter. They talked about it. And the relationship was resumed on a very tentative kind of try-it-out basis. And this letter explains why that took place. In that respect, it is very important evidence for the defense to rebut the inferences that the prosecution is seeking to draw from all of the prior incidents that were admitted. And I remind Your Honor, when you admitted those prior incidents, you said these are not coming in as evidence of character of Mr. Simpson. They are only being admitted to show motive, intent, plan, and identity. So what the prosecution wants to do with these incidents is kind of draw them all together into some sort of escalating progression of events that ultimately led to the act of murder. And we are entitled, we believe, to show that that's not the progression of events that actually took place at all. That, in fact, these incidents were interrupted by other contacts, and that in reaction to one of those contacts, in response to the receipt of this letter, Mr. Simpson resumed a relationship with his wife in March of 1993. In March of 1993, 4 months.
Mr. Uelmen, if I follow that argument, then wouldn't I also have to revisit my ruling on the sojourn statement where 5 days before the incident, Nicole Brown says to a domestic violence counselor, my ex-husband is stalking me and he says he's going to kill me? Should I let that in too?
No, absolutely not, because that...
Well, then what's the difference between these two?
That is not relevant to the defendant's state of mind. What we're talking about here is Mr. Simpson's state of mind. We're talking about Mr. Simpson's motive, Mr. Simpson's intent, Mr. Simpson's plan, and only statements that were made to Mr. Simpson would be relevant to show his state of mind in response to or in reaction to those statements. And that's the reason. Again, we're saying we're not offering this letter for the truth of what is asserted in the letter. That's the reason it's not hearsay. It is being offered essentially as a verbal act to show and explain the response and reaction of Mr. Simpson to that verbal act. It can be authenticated through the witnesses that we propose to question about it, it's an undated letter. They can fix the time at which this letter was received. They can identify the handwriting in which the letter was written. And based on when the letter was received, we believe can explain the subsequent conduct of Mr. Simpson. And that's what we're all about here, to explain his conduct, to show that there is an explanation other than the inferences that the prosecution wants to draw from all of these prior incidents coming into evidence. The inference that it shows a motive, it shows intent, it shows a plan. And we believe we're entitled to show just the opposite, to rebut that, to show that inference should not be drawn, to show that another inference should be drawn with respect to the nature of this relationship. There's no problem, of course, with Your Honor giving a limiting instruction, just as when you admitted the prior incidents, you told the jury, these are coming in for the limited purpose of showing motive, purpose, and when we let this letter in, we can say, ladies and gentlemen, this is not being admitted for the truth of what's asserted. It is being admitted simply to show the impact that it had on the recipient, and this evidence is simply to rebut any inference of motive, intent, or plan. It is not offered as evidence of Mr. Simpson's character and should not be considered for that purpose.
All right. Mr. Uelmen, do you have any case authority that deals with a similar situation?
Well, in response to the inquiry this morning from Mr. Gordon, I did make an effort to locate a couple of cases dealing precisely with the right of the defense to negate motive. That is, just as the prosecution can offer evidence of motive, the defense is entitled to offer evidence of of absence of motive, and there are a couple of cases where courts have held that it was error to exclude such evidence. Those cases include People v. Smith, 204 Calap 2nd, 797, a 1962 case, and People v. Weatherford, 27 Cal 2nd, 401 at 423, a 1945 case.
All right. Thank you, counsel. Mr. Gardner.
Afternoon, Your Honor. A couple of issues, and I think the court cited, or question identified, I think, one of the most major issues here. When we filed our initial motion, or our response to the defendant's motion to exclude evidence with regard to domestic violence, we detailed for the court and for counsel a number of incidents, statements, evidence we had. And during the litigation of that motion, we went through and indicated that we were only seeking to introduce a certain number of these under this 1101 / prior conduct type theory. The other ones we indicated to the court and to counsel basically were there so everyone had notice on and may well come back and be revisited upon if an effort exactly as the one such as this occurs. That there are many doors that can be opened, especially when we're dealing with states of mind within a relationship. And our concern with this letter are a couple. One is foundational. We have an undated letter coming in, not, from my understanding, the proffer, not to the recipient, not to the person who got it, not to the person who's supposedly going to indicate what state of mind they may or may not have. That's one problem, to bring a third party to talk about a letter.
But don't I have to, I have to assume, though, that there's probably going to be a foundation for this. We've seen Ms. Brown Simpson's handwriting before. This appears to be similar. The two videotapes were taken in the course of the search warrant. We've seen them. We know what they are. We can assume that these are the two videotapes that they're talking about in this letter, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I assume that the defense at some point in time can lay those foundations.
That element as to foundation, correct, as to authenticating the letter that this is in Ms. Brown's handwriting, accompanying these photographs, that's her in the photograph, that. That second part of foundation, to hear Mr. Uelmen's argument that something happened in response to this, or that this caused some action, or that the words within that letter were ever read, understood, acted upon, in any way dealt with. That's the problem. When you have a third-party witness who says, if I say I gave the judge a piece of paper and this is what he did or what he believed because of it, without the recipient testifying as to their state of mind or what occurred, that's the problem, and that's what we have the attempt to do, is to try to get someone else to testify as to what this defendant's state of mind is, assumably without him testifying to what it is. You can't, there's no foundation there. You can't do that. The only way you could do it...
Well, suppose the defendant testifies, then wouldn't this become admissible?
I think if the defendant testifies, we may have a certain... If the defendant testifies, we certainly may be in a different position, and as we put the court and the defendant on notice, and as the court indicated, it's certainly, there's a lot with regard to his state of mind, and I think the victim's state of mind, which is what this would open up, that could be inquired to, and we could then inquire questions of him as to his state of mind and his reliance, such as the base statement of, if what is occurring this, as Mr. Uelmen indicates, is that in sometime in 1993, he got this and felt that everything was going fine in the marriage, and this put him in a state of mind that he wasn't jealous, everything was fine, then why in October of 1993 do we have him charging through her house, screaming at her, having to have the police call, which certainly isn't evidence in any way in conformity with the picture that Mr. Uelmen would paint before us, which, since we don't know the time, would appear to be contemporaneous when this offer of this supposed acceptance of the termination of marriage occurs. The other problem with it is, and I think the court's indicated, what this really does and what their intent is with this letter is to put the victim's state of mind in. Because if what the defendant is saying, if what the defense is arguing is true, then the text of this doesn't matter at all. If the testimony is received a piece of paper and then acted in conformity with that as a verbal act, then what is said, not for the truth, doesn't mean anything. possibly who the authoress or authoress comes in, nothing else. What they want to do is get the text in, and what they want to do is carve out so they can selectively paint what this victim's state of mind is. The court knows, and we know, what her state of mind is, especially when it comes to her statements of fears to friends, to her relatives, to a domestic violence shelter, her documentation of incidents, her diary, all of that evidence which the court and the defense have notice of, that specifically indicates what her state of mind is. And if what the intent here is to open her state of mind, which I think is the only thing that I think is really going on here, then that evidence comes in. But to try to carve out some narrow tunnel to get her state to put a state of mind of the victim in, which is not the truth, which doesn't reflect what was occurring with this woman, which certainly does not reflect what was occurring at the time which is in question, which was in June of 1994 when she was calling a shelter indicating that she was scared that she was going to be killed. That would be improper. And that's what they're trying to do, is to get her intent in through this letter. And that's not proper unless we're going to completely open up her intent and how she felt, and then all that other evidence comes in to test this also.
Mr. Uelmen, any brief response? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, go ahead.
I think Your Honor is correct that the authentication issue is not really a problem. In fact,
I don't consider it to be a, I mean, based upon if you made an offer of proof that you could tie those things up, given what we
the
already know
witness
about
who is
the case.
currently on the stand can authenticate the handwriting and the time that this letter was written. You know, if Mr. Gordon's statement is correct, that the only way to prove the defendant's state of mind is through the defendant's own testimony, then we can all just fold up our tents and go home, because we then have no evidence in this case of Mr. Simpson's state of mind. What the prosecution wants to do is infer the state of mind from all of these prior incidents and have the jury believe that, without having heard from Mr. Simpson, that just based on all of these incidents that took place in 1985 and 1989 and in 1993, that they can then infer that he had a motive, that he had intent, that he had a plan. So they're seeking to draw an inference of the state of mind. Our position is we can rebut that inference in a number of ways. The prosecution is not in the position of telling us that the only evidence of state of mind that you can offer is to call the defendant to the witness stand. There are a number of ways we can prove state of mind, and this is one of them. One of them is to show that the conduct of the defendant was in response to a specific verbal act on the part of Nicole Brown Simpson. And that's precisely what we're attempting to do here. We're not offering to prove Nicole Brown Simpson's state of mind, and her sincerity or her honesty in writing this letter aren't an issue. The issue is simply, what does the letter say, and what impact did that have on the conduct of Mr. Simpson? Now, our other witnesses have already testified to the conduct of Mr. Simpson. We know for a fact now from the evidence that is already in the record that despite all of these prior incidents, in March of 1993, a year after their divorce, Mr. Simpson and his wife started seeing each other again. That testimony came this morning from Arnell Simpson. And that conduct continued for more than a year. And the question that you've got to ask is, well, why did that happen? Why did that happen? And here we have the answer. Here we have the explanation. So the relevance and purpose of this evidence is to explain the defendant's subsequent conduct. And that explanation does not have to come from his own lips or through his own testimony. Finally, we're told, well, this is inconsistent. If this is what was going on, then why did he have to break down a door and and engage in this shouting match in October of 1993. And that's why this is so important, because it is contemporaneous. It does occur at approximately the same time as the incident they put in evidence, and they want the jury to infer from that incident that Mr. Simpson had a motive, he had a plan, and he had the intent to kill his wife. And we're saying that's not an appropriate inference, and when you put this in context of what was going on at the time, and when you put it in context of what Mr. Simpson was reacting to in March of 1993.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Uelmen.
Very, very shortly, Your Honor.
No, I've heard enough. Thank you. All right. What this is a 5-page handwritten document, and I think we should give this a defense exhibit number at this point. 1226. Mr. Douglas, 1226, for the record, so we know what this is. I don't find any specific statutory or case law authority for the admissibility of this particular item. I agree, however, that the defense has the right to present evidence to negate a motive that is offered by the prosecution. I believe that the defense can establish an approximate date of March of 1993 because we know from previous evidence that Nicole Brown Simpson and the defendant attempted a reconciliation of their relationship shortly after that time, which continued until approximately May of 1994. However, there is no evidence code section that allows the use of this particular item for that particular purpose. There is a long time lag between March of 1993 and the incident that occurred in October of 1993, a 7-month time period. And human relations can take many turns and twists over that period of time. And I think a statement of mind in March is not necessarily reflective of a state of mind in October. Also, the evidence of the attempt at reconciliation is in the record through other witnesses, and I'll sustain the objection under lack of statutory grounds, case law authority, and under 352 issues since it's already in the record. All right. Let's have the jury. All right, let the record reflect we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies to you for our late start. We had a few legal matters to take care of before we asked you to come in. Ms. Simpson, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, the record to reflect Ms. Arnell Simpson is on the witness stand, again undergoing direct examination by Mr. Cochran. Good afternoon, Ms. Simpson.
Good afternoon.
You're reminded that you are still under oath. Mr. Cochran, you may continue.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Ms. Simpson.
Good afternoon.
Can you move the microphone a little bit closer to you? I have just a few more questions of you, if I might. Do you recall back on or about May 22nd, 1994, whether or not there was a picnic or some kind of a party involving children at your home there at Rockingham?
Yes, there was.
And can you tell us briefly what that picnic or party was about?
For the last 3 years, Sunshine Preschool, which Justin and Sydney both had attended, they have an annual picnic to raise money for the school, and my father would donate his house to have the picnic there.
Do you recall that picnic and party taking place in 1994, about May 22nd?
Yes.
Now, do you recall whether or not your minor brother and sister, Justin and Sydney, attended that particular function?
Yes, they were.
And were you there also?
Yes, I was.
And do you recall whether or not Miss Nicole Brown Simpson came to that location?
Yes, she was.
Now, was this after the time that your father and mother decided to go their separate ways? Strike that. Your father and stepmother decided to go their separate ways?
Yes.
But she came also to this particular picnic, is that right?
Yes, she did.
Do you recall seeing her at any place inside of the Rockingham residence on that date?
Yes.
And describe what you saw at that time.
At one point, we were all inside the house watching TV. The playoffs were on.
What kind of playoffs?
Basketball.
All right.
Some of the other parents were inside, mostly the men were, and my father and Nicole were sitting on the couch.
And which
together.
room was that?
In the TV room.
All right. And you observed this yourself?
Yes.
Did you notice anything else about as they sat there on the couch?
Yeah, she was sitting on his lap.
All right. And this was after they'd broken up, right?
Yes.
All right. Later on, were you aware of whether or not she went any place else inside that house that day?
Yes, she had said that she wasn't feeling well, and she went upstairs and lay down in the bed.
In whose bed?
My father's.
Now, with regard to that, was this within a week of the time that you'd said she'd been sick with pneumonia?
Yes.
All right. This was toward the end of that period of time?
Yes.
All right. So she still wasn't feeling well on that particular date?
Yes.
And was this May 22nd, was that on a Sunday, as far as you know?
Yes.
All right. Now, you told us earlier that your father no longer plays tennis. Does he play golf?
Yes, he does.
Does he play golf regularly, as far as you know?
Yes.
Do you ever at any time see him around the house swinging golf clubs or tipping golf balls?
Oh,
Yes, all the time.
Can you describe that for us, what you've seen?
He just was always talking about golf. He was kind of obsessed with it. He was always trying to, better his game, and he was always playing around with the golf balls or his swing, trying to perfect his swing.
Have you ever seen him out in that yard hitting any golf balls?
Yes.
Chipping them?
Yes.
You don't play golf, do you?
No.
So the terminology is a little bit foreign to you, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you've seen your father do that?
Yes.
Right? Now, with regard to the events of the evening of June 13th, wherein you returned home after about 6 o'clock or so in the evening and you saw these people inside the Rockingham residence, you remember that?
Yes.
And you've described for us some of the people who were there. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Have you told us all the people who were present?
No.
Were there other friends who were also present?
Yes, there was a lot of people coming and going
All right.
during that
with-
time.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
During that time, there's just a lot of commotion, people coming and going.
All right. So there were a lot of people, friends and family member coming in and out?
Yes.
Not everybody came at the same time, is that right?
No.
Then, as I presume, you were in other rooms throughout the house on occasion also?
Yes, I was.
oh.
Anyone else that you recall was there that you haven't told us about thus far?
Kathy Randa, Neil Sloan, and some other people were coming and going. There was a lot of people there.
All right. Have you been nervous this morning during your testimony?
Yes, I have.
You told us the truth?
Yes, I have.
I have nothing further at this point, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Ms. Clark?
Hi.
We've done this before, haven't we?
Yes, we
Remember
have.
the prelim?
Mhm.
I'll try and make it as quick as I can for you.
Okay.
Let me just ask you, since you guys left off at the June 13th when people were coming and going at Rockingham, do you recall seeing Skip Taft there?
Yes.
Yes. And Skip Taft, that's your father's lawyer, correct?
Yes, he is.
And did you also see Howard Weitzman there?
Howard Weissman.
Don't recall him?
I'm sometimes bad with names. I'm better with faces.
Okay. If I describe him, will that help?
Yes.
I hope he's not watching this. Okay. He's about, I don't know, about this tall, and he's kind of ruddy complected. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gesturing. I mean, wait, no. With heels on, I'm 5'8", about my height, 5'8", 5'9", and ruddy complected, balding. I'm just kind of balding, ruddy complected. He's a lawyer also.
I don't recall.
Okay. There were a lot of people there that day.
Yes.
Now, you indicated that you visited Nicole at Bundy on occasion,
Yes.
correct? Was that alone or was that with your father?
Sometimes with my dad, sometimes alone, sometimes with a friend.
Okay. And when you did that, when you went to visit her, where would you park?
I'd usually park on Bundy,
And where on Bundy did you park?
right in front of the house.
You could leave your car right there in front?
Yes, I believe so. I would.
Okay. What time of day was it that you usually parked there?
Sometimes at night, sometimes in the morning, sometimes during the day.
So you came all different times?
Yes.
As of late '93, Nicole had a black Jeep Cherokee, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And also a white Ferrari?
Yes.
And you would see those parked at Bundy whenever you went by there, went to visit,
Not from the front.
from the back?
Yeah, yes.
And would there would be occasions sometimes when you'd pull up behind the back also, maybe to come and get the kids, pull into that alley behind her condo?
I usually always pulled in the front.
Okay. Was that because you were coming in to visit her, come inside the condo?
Yes.
Okay. Was there ever an occasion when you came by just to pick up the kids or just to drop them off, when you just pull in behind in that alley?
I never used the alley.
You didn't.
No, I didn't.
Now, you stated that you knew that Mr. Simpson traveled on the week of June the 6th of 1994.
Yes.
Can you tell us where he traveled to?
I can't tell you specifically. I knew he was out of town, but I didn't know where exactly he was going.
Can you tell us what days he was out of town?
I believe that he had left on a Sunday and left on actually a Monday or Tuesday and returned on that Friday.
Okay. And do you know if he went out of town again after that Friday, like on Friday night?
No.
And you're not sure it might be Monday or Tuesday that he left?
Yeah.
Now, would it be fair to state that you're not exactly sure of what day Mr. Simpson and Nicole Brown broke up for the last time?
Yes.
Now, she was sick for a period of time in May, is that right?
Yes.
And that was for more than a week or so? That was kind of an extended illness?
Yes.
Would you say that was for like 2 or 3 weeks that she was pretty sick with pneumonia?
Yes.
Okay. You know her birthday was on May 19th, right?
Yes.
And she was still sick when her birthday came around, is that right? She was sick with pneumonia for her birthday?
I believe so. Yes.
And during the time that she was sick, your father visited her once to bring her some soup, is that right?
Yes.
Now, you recall the present that he gave her for her birthday, a real expensive bracelet?
No, I didn't know of that.
You didn't know about that bracelet?
No.
Do you recall that she gave it back to him on her birthday?
Sustain. Assumes facts that aren't in evidence. Foundation.
All right, you don't know then what your father gave her, if anything, for her birthday?
No.
Or whether she gave it back to him after that point when they broke up?
Sustain.
right, do you know whether Mr. Simpson gave a gift to Paula shortly after Nicole's birthday?
Yes.
Was that a bracelet?
Yes.
A real expensive one, diamonds and stuff on it?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know who had that bracelet, if anyone, before her?
No.
And was it about around Memorial Day, around there, when he gave it to Paula?
I don't recall exactly.
Does that sound about right? You're kind of, you think?
I don't recall exactly, so
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Do you know if your father went to La Quinta with Paula on Memorial Day weekend?
I knew my dad was out of town, but I wasn't sure where he went.
Okay, you don't know who he went with. Is that right?
Overruled.
I would say I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Now, during the time of 93 to 94, when you indicated that they were attempting to reconcile, Mr. Simpson and Nicole Brown, can you tell us till when, from approximately when, was it March or April of 93 that it began, that reconciliation period?
I believe it began the end of April.
And from that time until some point in May, because you're unsure about the time, but from that point until sometime in May of 94, is it your belief that that they were together and were not dating other people?
I know they started to date each other exclusively May of 93 to May of 94.
Now, were you aware that he had traveled to Hawaii with Paula Barbieri between those two times, May of 93 to May of 94?
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
All right. Were you present in court when Cato Kalin testified?
No.
Okay. Were you watching television or aware of any of his testimony?
No.
Do you recall your father taking a trip to Hawaii between May of 93 and May of 94?
No.
Now, you testified that you did not see Paula Barbieri at the location at Rockingham. Were you at Rockingham every day between May of 93 and May of 94?
No.
All right. And you didn't see who your father traveled with when he traveled, correct?
Overruled.
No.
So if he visited with somebody out of town, you wouldn't know about that, would you?
No.
All right. Now, you said that you stayed at the New York condo quite a bit.
Yes.
Was that a condo or an apartment? I don't want to misstate it.
Apartment. Yeah, apartment.
And was that apartment near a department store named Bloomingdale's?
Yes.
Okay. Did you shop there often?
Yes.
And did your father also shop there often?
Yes.
Did you ever attend any of the football games where he was a commentator there?
No.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about, at Rockingham, how many keys were there for the doors to the main house?
One.
And so that one key would open the front and the rear doors?
The front door, there aren't any locks on the rear doors. Well, on some of them there are, actually.
And is it the same key for those locks?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I don't believe so.
You don't think so?
No, I didn't have the key. The locks are very high up on the doors in the rear.
Let me, could I have a moment? You're talking about the French doors at the rear of the house, where it's very high up?
Yes.
Okay. Is there another door that leads into the billiard room that is just a regular door that you
Yes.
can go in through? Okay. And you have the key to that door?
There is no, it's only locked from the inside of the house. There's no lock from the outside.
You can't open it from the outside?
No, you cannot.
Is there another door that leads into the billiard room, or actually, you know, there's an area you walk into and the billiard room is to your left? Okay, that door. Can you open that one from the outside?
It's in the billiard room you're speaking of?
I don't think it's in the billiard room. It's the billiard room, as you walk in, would be to your left,
So towards the TVs?
towards the TV room, correct?
There's a little, those doors are nailed shut.
Okay, what means do you gain entry from the rear of the house when you if you were trying to go into the rear of the house? What door would you take?
You can't. You would have to go around to the front.
There's no door that admits you in through the rear of the house?
No, unless you go through the guest house.
What about through... Let's get that. May I have a moment, Your Honor? Let me ask you another question so we don't waste time. You're familiar with the alarm system in the house, correct?
Yes.
All right. So there's an alarm sensor for the rear door, isn't there?
Yes.
Okay. And that alarm sensor has a 40-second delay, correct?
Yes.
So if you enter through the rear door, you have 40 seconds to get to a keypad to disarm the alarm, correct?
Yes.
And the maid's room has a keypad in it for the alarm, right?
Not in the maid's room, but
Just outside it?
Yes.
Right, I know what you mean. Okay. And that would be like kind of next to the laundry room?
yes.
Okay. Is there a common wall between the laundry room and the maid's room?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you indicated that before you entered, let me ask you this, before you entered the house with the police officers, while you were between the point when you left your room and got into the house, do you recall having a conversation with them about whether there was a maid on the premises?
Yes.
And you recall them asking you about whether there was a maid present?
Yes.
And you told them Gigi was usually there?
Yes.
Okay, and do you recall them asking where the maid's room was?
No.
Do you recall them asking you to show you the maid's room?
No.
For you to show them the maid's room?
No.
You don't recall doing any of that?
No.
Do you recall either of them going into the maid's room at some point after you entered the house?
No.
Do you recall any of them standing near that area in the maid's room?
Yes, because the phone is right there that we had used in the kitchen.
And do you recall going past the maid's room when you entered the house?
No.
Now, as of June the 12th, 1994, the maid in residence name was Gigi?
Yes.
Okay. And she worked Monday to Friday, is that right?
Yes.
Did she usually leave on Friday night or Saturday morning?
Friday night.
She didn't come back to the house on Sunday night, June the 12th, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, are you aware that Mr. Simpson told her not to come back on that Sunday night?
Sustained. Sustained.
Did you have a conversation with Gigi about any instructions she may have had about whether or not to come back to the house on Sunday night?
Objection, Your Honor. Let me put you on objection.
Overruled.
No.
Now, then is it your testimony that if you were to be inside the house and you wanted to go out to the pool area, you would have to go all the way, you would have to go out the front entrance and go all the way through that area marked as lawn at the back to get to the pool?
Can you repeat that for me?
Sure. Is it your testimony that if you were inside the house and you wanted to go and use the pool area, you'd have to go out through the front door and down the driveway and up through that area marked lawn to the pool?
Overruled.
If I were to go out to the pool from inside the house,
Right.
I could leave through the door, through the back the one back door.
And which door would that be?
The door which is closest to the pool table area. Should I show you?
Sure. Okay, thanks. Right. Here. Yes.
Indicating the southern and easternmost portion of the house before you get to the pool room.
Thank you.
Did you see that, Mr. Carter?
I checked it just in time. I think the southernmost portion.
Southernmost portion before you get to the pool room. The door that's there.
Now, at the time that you had that conversation with the officers about the maid and who was on the premises, you were outside the house still at that point, correct?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that on June the 12th, that morning, you left at approximately 10 o'clock that morning?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time that you left, did you go into the main house?
No.
And you came back at approximately what time after church?
11, 11:10,
Okay. And then you left again at what time?
around 12:30.
At any point in there, when you came back from church and between that time when you left again at 12:30, did you go into the main house?
No.
Did you see Kate O'Kalin at any point in there?
No.
Did you see Mr. Simpson at any point?
No.
After you left at 12:30 p.m., you came back again at about 1 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay, is that an approximation, 1 to 1:30, something like that?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, did you go straight back to your room?
Yes.
And when you went to your room, you would have to have walked by Kate O'Kalin's room, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you testified earlier that you knew that he was home that night, correct?
Yes.
And how did you know that? Did you see lights on in his room, or
His car.
his car was there?
Yes.
So the next time, all right, so during the day of June the 12th, the entire day, there was no point at which you went into the main house, is that right?
Yes.
And what about June the 11th? Was there any time that you went into the main house on that day?
Yes.
And on that day, what time was it when you went into the main house?
In the evening,
Was that late at night?
around 9 or 10.
Was anybody in the house at that time?
No.
Now, if between, what was the last time you were in the main house between June 11th and June 13th?
Between June 11th and June 13th?
Yeah, what I
The-
mean is, I'll be more specific, I'm sorry. June 11th, you were in the house between 9 and 10 p.m., is that
Yes.
right? Okay. And then you did not really go back into the main house after that point until around 5:30 a.m. on June the 13th, is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. So if Gigi had returned between those two times, you would not have known it?
Sustained.
Would you have any way of knowing if Gigi came back between 9 or 10 at night on June the 11th and 5:30 a.m. June the 13th?
That's a two-part question. Can I answer it?
Sure.
Rephrase the question.
I think she was objecting compound. Okay. What do you have any way of knowing when Gigi's on or off the premises, other than seeing her there?
Yes.
And what is that?
Her car.
Okay. Does she always bring her car to the house?
Yes.
Does she always park it in the same place?
Yes.
Where's that?
In the driveway, right, kind of where the garage is, right in front of the garage.
So she parks it inside the gate when she's there?
Yes.
Now, on the night of Let me come back to that in a minute. Now, when the officers first contacted you at around 5:30 a.m. at your room, they indicated to you that they'd been ringing and trying to reach someone in the house, correct?
Yes.
You hadn't heard anything, had you?
No.
Had you heard Chachi barking that night?
No.
You hadn't heard anything unusual at all?
No.
And when the officers asked you where Mr. Simpson was, you didn't tell them, did you?
No.
Because you didn't know, did you?
No.
And the officers, you never told them what time Mr. Simpson left to go out of town, did you?
No.
And that's because you didn't know, did you?
Overruled.
And that's because you didn't know, did you?
No, I didn't know.
Now, at the point in time that they woke you up, about 5:30, you had had, what, about 4 hours sleep?
Yes.
Were you pretty tired
Yes.
and a little bit in shock
Yes, very much so.
and pretty frazzled?
Yes.
It was pretty upsetting, all of the events, weren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you believe at that time that you were first contacted, there were 2 officers at your door?
Yes.
Could it have been 3 and you didn't notice one standing back behind?
Yes.
And then after you spoke to them briefly, you came outside with them, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, during that entire conversation you had with them, the Detective Furman was not present, is that right?
No.
And when you left your room with them, he was in the room with, or he was standing in front of Cato's room talking to him?
Yes.
So at no point did you ever have any conversation with Detective Furman about how to reach your father or where he was, is that right?
Yes.
And after you spoke after you spoke to Kathy Randa and found out where Mr. Simpson was, you did not speak to Detective Furman, is that right?
Yes.
And during the time that you were having that conversation, that telephone call with her, Kathy Randa, Detective Furman was not around, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the detectives that were with you, Van Adder and Lang and Phillips, do you recall one of them asking you whether the Bronco parked out in front belonged to Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Okay. And you told them that it did, is that right?
Yes.
All right. Now, you indicated to us that you called Kathy Randa, and then you gave the phone to Detective Lang, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you sure it was Detective Lang? Could that have been Detective Phillips? Are you real firm about that?
It could have been Phillips.
Okay. And you also testified that there was no phone call made from that phone in the kitchen after the conversation with Kathy Randa. Is that correct?
Sustained. Sustained. Phrase question.
Let me be more clear. After you made the phone call to Kathy Randa, the detective, whether it was Lang or Phillips, spoke to Kathy Randa. Is that right?
Yes.
And then after that point, is it your testimony that no phone call was placed by either yourself or the detectives before Mr. Simpson called in?
Oral.
No.
Do you recall that a phone call, that immediately after speaking to Kathy Randa, one of the detectives placed a phone call on that telephone?
I don't recall that.
Is it your recollection that before anyone placed a phone call to Mr. Simpson in Chicago, he called to the house?
Can you repeat that for me?
Sure. The time frame is the phone call to Kathy Randa.
Yes.
Okay. And you were in the kitchen with Detective Van Adder and Detective Lang and Detective Phillips, is that right? Well, if that's not right, she can tell me.
Oral.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, after the phone call was placed to Kathy Randa, that's when you all learned exactly where Mr. Simpson was, right?
Yes.
At that point, though, just before the phone call was placed, no one there knew exactly what time he had left or where he was. Is that a fair statement?
Sustained. Phrase question.
Okay, you did not know that, correct?
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, neither did the detectives.
Yes.
Sustained.
At that point, they were asking you where Mr. Simpson was and when he had left, or did they ever ask you when he had left?
Yes, they did ask me when he had left. I had said that he was out of town, but I did not know where he was, but I could call somebody that would know, and that's when I placed the call to Kathy Randa.
Okay. And you did not tell them when he had left because you didn't know that?
No.
Okay. And so then the phone call was placed to Kathy Randa, and at that point you found out where Mr. Simpson was exactly, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then one of the detectives, could be Phillips, could be Lang, spoke to Kathy Randa, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And after that point, was a phone call received into the house. Did someone call the house, and was that person Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
All right. And so did any of the officers place a call before that phone call was received from Mr. Simpson?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Okay, is it that you don't recall that, or you believe that that did not happen?
Sustained.
Okay. Give us your best recollection. Is it in your memory right now, is your state of mind that you received a call from Mr. Simpson before a call was placed by one of the detectives to him?
Yes.
That's what you, okay.
Yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? All right, you're familiar with your father's phone number, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that's no longer the number, right?
Yes.
Okay. And your phone number also, from your room, that's no longer your phone number either, correct?
Yes.
So it's safe to mention these numbers now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are you also familiar with Cato Kalin's phone number, what it used to be back there at Rockingham?
No.
But he had his own phone, is that right?
Yes.
And it rang in his room, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and there was a separate phone number for the main house, is that right?
Yes.
Now, I believe it was your testimony that you spoke to Mr. Simpson 3 times on June the 13th, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And once was when you were in the kitchen, he called in?
Yes.
And once was when he called in and you were on your way to your room and it was in the TV room?
Yes.
And once was in your room?
Yes.
Okay.
Call roll.
Okay, Your Honor, I have here a phone record from Air Touch. I'd like to show the witness. I'll ask it to be marked. Actually, I think it's already, I'm sure it is. I'll mark it again. People's next in order, 490?
489.
489. Thank you, ma'am. Testimony earlier is that all of those calls were made by Mr. Simpson from Chicago, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to show you people's 489. Try and make it bigger. Okay, slide over there. There we go. All right. Now you see, these are just for your information, Ms. Simpson. This is the phone calls placed from your father's cell phone from Chicago on the date of June the 13th. Okay.
Mhm.
Do you see the phone numbers there listed?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the man by the name of Skip Taft, correct?
Yes.
You indicated that was your father's lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recognize his phone numbers on this bill? You can direct the arrow. See that arrow up there?
No.
You don't recognize him?
No.
You don't know him
Unless it's-
offhand?
Is it his home or office number?
Either one.
I only know the office number.
Okay. Do you recognize one of these numbers as his office number?
No.
Okay. Do you have any record with you, a phone book like the one you had on June the 13th that would refresh your recollection as to what his phone numbers are?
I know the office number by heart.
Okay. And do you see his office number here?
No.
Maybe we approach this one, we take that down.
Are you worried about the, yeah.
I'm still taking it down.
Let me just cover all of them at once now. Try it one more time. And then I'll just show it to you. Okay. There's only one number showing now. The number in the main house, the prefix, do you recall whether it was 476?
Yes.
Okay, and since that's no longer the number, the full number for the main house, was that 476-4619?
Yes.
All right. 4619, yeah. Okay, now the number that we're showing here on the screen on People's 489, 476-1706, do you recognize that as being Cato Kalin's phone number in his room?
No.
All right. Now, you indicated that there was a call received in your house. Let me just show this to you. If you tell me if you recognize any of the phone numbers on this bill on People's 489 as a phone number that would go into the main house with Mr. Simpson as of June the 13th.
Into
June the 13th, as of June the 13th.
no.
Okay. All right, I'm going to show you now. The phone calls registered for his hotel room in Chicago.
Okay.
Mr. Cochran, you have a copy of these?
I'm going to show it to make sure. He does, but
All right.
I'm gonna have here.
Okay, this is the copy of the defendant's phone bill at Howard Johnson in Chicago for June the 13th. Asked it to be marked People's 490.
All right, People's 490, hotel phone record.
Okay, I'm going to show you the phone bill that's now been marked as People's 490, and just to help you out, I'm going to direct your attention to one particular phone number here, 310-476-4619. Ask you if you recognize that.
Yes.
All right, that's the phone number to the main house?
Yes.
So between all right, so looking at the cell phone bill and the hotel bill, it would appear that one phone call was made to the main house, correct, from Chicago?
Yes.
All right. Now, do you have any recollection of a police officer placing a call from the house in the kitchen where you were in your presence to Mr. Simpson in Chicago?
No, I don't have any recollection of that.
Okay. I'm going to show you, while you have those in your hand, hang on to those. Actually, I believe these are already in evidence, Your Honor, but I can't remember the number of the exhibit. The defendant's phone bill, GTE phone bill.
All right, why don't we take our recess at this point, and you can locate the other bill.
Okay, or I can use my copy right now to make it easier, just to show
No,
the
but we
witness.
need to know what
Oh,
you're
you-
referring to. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our mid-afternoon break at this time. Please remember all my admonitions to you. We'll stand in recess for 15 minutes. Ms. Simpson, you can come down and come back in 15 minutes. Please. Yes. Mr. Cochran.
Ms. Clark asked a question, Your Honor, about whether or not Mr. Simpson went to Hawaii with Paula Barberi after the period of between May 93 and May 94. And I don't think that question was asked in good faith. If they have any records, I'd like to see that. There's absolutely no records. He went to Hawaii in the summer of 1993 with Nicole Brown Simpson, and the only time he ever went with Paula Barberi was I think in January of 1993. She asked it specifically in a period after Ms. Arnell Simpson said that they had to try to get back together.
All right, let's check the record and see what, I'm not going to stop the proceedings
All
at
right,
this
but
point.
I'd like that
Plus,
said.
Ms. Arnell Simpson testified she had no personal knowledge of anything like that occurring, and
Yes,
that was the end of it.
but the question I'm saying was in bad faith, and I don't actually stop the proceedings, but if you go back and look at the record, and I'm telling you, if you check his travel records, those are the facts. There should be some good faith before these questions are asked before the jury. I have one other matter that, when you allow me to, I want to do it at sidebar. It has to do with when the feed is cut and not cut, if the court will allow us. I can do that at the appropriate time. Someone's brought to my attention during the break. So you let me know when I can do that.
All right,
Okay.
let's have the jurors, please. I'm sorry.
Indicate for the record while they're coming out, Your Honor, that as a matter of good faith, pages 20444 and 20445, with my examination of Cato Kalin demonstrates that he testified that in January of 94, he was dating Paula Barbieri, and that when I asked him about a trip to Hawaii between 93 and 94 that he made with Paula Barbieri, he said he didn't know if they went, He said he didn't know if they went on trips, but they probably did. He didn't know, and then as a matter of fact, I asked him about a Memorial Day trip in June of 94, and he said, yeah, I think it was to Palm Springs then. And so we have a good faith belief in the basis for that question.
In June of 94, by that time they had broken up, there'd be no question. You saw Cato Kalin.
Completely ignored the beginning part of what I just
Well, those
Wait,
questions there.
Wait. We'll take this up later. I'm not interested in hearing about it now. Give me the page site.
20444 and 20445.
Got it, thank you. Let's have the Cub Scouts pull that up, please.
204, Your Honor, 2043 is also
All right. All right, let's have the jurors, please.
All right, you testified, oh, let me back up. Let me just show you this one phone number. You'll recognize it. No, I don't think you will, actually. You have the bills in front of you, correct?
Yes,
All
I
right.
do.
I'm going to let you refer to that, and I'm showing you on the screen now. Let me read this for you, what you see on the screen. This is the raw data bill for a phone company, GTE. It shows the date of June 13th, Chicago, Illinois, at 6:05 a.m., area code 312, number 693-5800. And you have, that 5 over there is the amount of time. It's 5 minutes. Okay, you have the phone bill for Mr. Simpson's hotel room in Chicago, correct?
Yes.
Does that appear, there you go. And that was Marcus Peoples' phone line, am I right?
Yes.
All right, good. Do you see the phone number for the hotel room there? I'm going to direct your attention to it right
here.
there.
Yes.
All right. And does that appear to be the same phone number that you see up on the screen?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you the top of the phone bill on which this number appears and ask you to identify the phone number shown. And was that the phone number for the main house back on June 13th?
Yes.
All right. So does this reflect that their phone call was made from the main house, the phone in the main residence on June the 13th at 6:05 a.m. to the phone number listed for your father's room in Chicago on June the 13th?
I object to that question. And based on the record speaking themselves, I'm going to show you
Overruled.
to indicate that.
Yes.
All right. So would you agree that perhaps you are mistaken about having a phone call been placed from the main residence to Mr. Simpson in Chicago before he called to the main residence?
I don't recall that, but there was so much going on, and I was so emotional that it could have happened, yes.
Okay, yeah. You testified also that you thought you went to pick up the children at the police station at 7 to 7:15?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after you got the children from the police station, they were in West LA, is that right?
Yes.
And you were in Brentwood, correct?
Yes.
And it took maybe, what, 5 to 10 minutes to get to the station?
Yes.
Around there?
Yes.
All right. And then it took a few minutes to get them out of the station, talk to them, et cetera?
Yes.
Okay. And then another 5 to 10 minutes to get back?
Yes.
Okay, so about a half-hour time lapse total between the time you left and the time you got back to Rockingham with the children?
I had said 20 minutes, but yes, it could
Fair,
have been
just
30.
an estimate.
Yes.
All right.
In that time frame, yes.
Okay. And then it would have been, if you left about 7:15, it would have been about 7:35 to 7:45 when you got back to the house. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified that Sydney went to sleep and Justin played Nintendo?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall Cato playing Nintendo with him as well?
No, I don't recall that.
Okay. Was Cato around, though, at that time?
Yes.
So he could have been playing Nintendo. Is that something you would...
Sustain
All right.
Fred's question.
Is that, do you have a particular recollection of whether or not Cato played Nintendo with Justin or not?
Overruled.
I don't recall him, no.
Okay. Now, at some point in there, after you brought the children home, do you recall that the police asked you and Cato to look for the keys to the Bronco?
No, I don't recall that.
Do you recall Cato looking around for the keys to the Bronco?
No.
Did you know whether your father had those keys with him in Chicago at the time?
Overruled.
No, I did not know.
Now, you were asked to leave the premises by the officers at some point, correct?
Yes.
How long after you got back to Rockingham with the children were you asked to leave the premises?
Maybe 15 to 20 minutes later.
Okay, which would have been sometime after 8 o'clock then?
Yes.
All right. Now, you recall testifying at the preliminary hearing in this matter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you... I'm sorry? Had a motion in the preliminary hearing in this matter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall testifying as to what time you were asked to leave the premises by the police officers?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall what your testimony was at that time?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Would it refresh your recollection? I've showed you your testimony.
Please.
Counsel, page 66 of volume 9.
What line down?
Line 7, well, lines 4 through 9. Okay. Wait, before I approach this, let me ask you the standard word questions. Back in July of 1994, when you testified at the motion for the preliminary hearing in this matter, can you tell us if your memory was more fresh as to the events of June the 13th back in July of 94 than they are now?
Yes.
I think that would be a fair statement, wouldn't it?
Yes.
All right, so let me show you what you testified to back then and direct your attention to line 4. Take it through line 10.
And just read that to your son, see if that refreshes your recollection.
All right. Does that refresh your recollection any as to when you were asked to leave the premises by the police officers back on June the 13th, 1994?
Yes.
Okay. And was that more accurate statement, the testimony you gave back then at the preliminary hearing?
Yes, that's fair to say.
Okay. And so is it correct then that they probably asked you to leave between 7:15 and 7:30?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. All right. Now, you indicated that you weren't sure exactly on what day Mr. Simpson and Nicole Brown broke up, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And certainly you were not present when that happened.
No.
And you do not know whether it happened before or after her birthday on May 19th, correct?
I don't know that, no.
Okay. Let me ask you, on June the 12th, you were not present to see whether or not he was swinging golf clubs around the house on that day, correct?
No.
All right. And you didn't see Ms. Brown in the Rockingham residence in the month of June of 1994, did you?
Can you repeat that for me?
Yeah. You didn't see Ms. Nicole Brown in the Rockingham residence in the month of June of 1994, did you?
No.
All right. And you did not see what Mr. Simpson was wearing on the night of June the 12th when he went with Cato to McDonald's, did you?
No.
And at 10 o'clock p.m. on the night of June the 12th, were you at a movie?
Yes.
Okay. And so you don't know where the Bronco was at that time, at 10 o'clock at night? Let me put it this way. You did not see the Bronco at 10 o'clock at night, is that correct? On the night of June the 12th?
I don't recall.
And you did not see Mr. Simpson between 10 and 11 o'clock at night on June the 12th, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Cochran?
Ms. Simpson, you were just shown some testimony that you gave, I guess, back at the hearing earlier regarding times. With regard to the times you've given us back then and today, have you been as accurate as you could?
Yes.
The point is, did the police ask you to leave your residence?
Yes.
The point is, did you go pick up your brother and sister?
Yes.
Did you go to the West Los Angeles station and pick them up?
Yes.
Within 15 minutes after coming back, did the police ask you to leave?
Yes.
But it was leading, but
Well,
It's in the record.
Less leading than Your Honor. Okay, so that, were those facts accurate? You
Yes.
just talked about? Now, with regard to Detective Van Adder, do you ever recall a time prior to you leaving to pick up your brother and sister that Detective Van Adder was in the kitchen?